Wonder Woman issue. Sorry, let me correct that. Wonder Girl issue 4.
There
Joelle
you go.
Jones.
I was like, did I miss another book?
No, Wonder Girl issue 4. So we're back to Yara, and I think I want to get something negative out of the way first. I do think the long gaps between issues are hurting my engagement in this, because I'm struggling to remember at times where we were in the last part of the story.
And yeah, so I'll get my negative out too. The story in this is a bit of a mess. The art, fantastic. This issue feels a little bit like filler, and I don't like that.
Well, the funny thing is that I kind of liked it when I realized, okay, this is her training, this is her becoming like a Wonder Woman type fighter, and like learning the lessons, and her trying to like bond with the Pegasus, and it only happening when she was vulnerable, and that's when the Pegasus comes up and like engages with her in the rain. That stuff I liked well enough. I do think some of the pages where it's the gold art, where it's effectively a montage, I think those pages do genuinely feel like filler to me, where nothing's really happening. It's just a couple of general narration boxes. But for the most part, there's not really anything worthwhile other than just the passage of time as she's getting better as a fighter. And it tells us outright that the passage of time in Olympus, or wherever she is right now,
is different.
So it's not like time is passing on Earth, which is a bit of a cop-out, just so that we can have her go through all this without it affecting the timeline on Earth. So, sure, whatever.
Right, and that's where I talk about it being a little bit messy, where it doesn't feel like it's informing the story very much. Like, I get like that she was this girl that was heading down to Brazil to get in touch with her roots, and now she goes to be Olympus's champion for Hera, and she's doing all this. But like, the gold art's just doing so much of it, and not that I need to see her train all the time, but it's almost just like an afterthought. It's like Jones is just like, well, I'm gonna throw it into this montage, but then it's just like, well, there's some real cool stuff in here that's just getting skimmed over. Well, I think that's what in this montage.
That's what makes the Pegasus stuff work. Is there's a little start and end to it where she's struggling to gain the respect of the Pegasus, and how she ultimately gets it is a little bit of a story. It's a little bit of a turn, and that's what makes it work, and that's what makes it feel like there's a progression. A lot of the other stuff is just like, here's some generic montage stuff of her training to give you a vibe that's happening. Honestly, my bigger issue with this story is probably the exposition dump afterwards, where the Brazilian Amazon, if that's even the right term, when she shows up and sort of explains the story of how Yara's mother didn't go to Themyscira and she didn't go to Egypt. She kind of stayed separate from the other Amazon tribes, and she just did her own thing, and it resulted in this birth of a child, and it resulted in this.
Yeah, she met one of the Brazilian river gods, I guess, and that's where Yara comes from, and she built her own tribe of Amazons in the Amazon, and like, that's cool. I like seeing the split. It's just, you're right, it's a dump. Like, they're just saying, hey.
It's a dump, and then the other problem I had with this is that after we get the exposition dump, the Artemis and Cassie show up, right? And Cassie gives us some advice and sort of says, hey, like, Hera's trying to turn you into something, make sure that's what you actually want, and consider, think about it before you're just going to accept it, because she's effectively been given this choice where she's going to drink this elixir and it'll make her an Amazon or part god or something, but she can never go back to being immortal after this, right? And the cliffhanger at the end of the issue is her going to take the sip, but she's not quite done it yet, so we don't know if she might like swerve us at the start of the next issue. Well, but it looks like, but I finish my point, but it looks like she's going to do it. When Cassie and Artemis show up and give her this advice, they just leave. Like, Artemis rambles and just says, oh, this is the girl who everyone's talking about or trying to find, and Cassie gives her this a bit of advice, but they just leave. And I immediately went, wait, why would they try to find her again? Because it feels like it was more than just to give her like a quick bit of advice and leave. It felt more it felt more pointed than that. I felt like there was like a mission to accomplish, and they just leave her after speaking to her for a minute. It felt weird to me.
Well, and also she got to go back down to Earth after her training, because she had asked, like, I need to think about this, right? So she goes to Eros, and
that's where she is. That's where she is when she gets the exposition dub. It's where she is when Cassie and Artemis show up to talk to her.
And she's down there talking to Zhao, and I like this part too, where she talks about like I feel like there's something that I could go do for the greater good, but I also don't want to miss out on my life. So like, what do I do? And he finally he conks out, or falls asleep, and that's where the other Amazon shows up from Brazil, and stuff. And it just, this is where I talk about it being a mess, because that dump happens, and then the stuff with where we've seen Cassie and Artemis tracking her down for what? What's the ultimate point? Were they trying to stop her from going off with arrows?
I feel like I missed something. I feel like I was misremembering what their purpose was, because it felt like they just walked away from her like very quickly, and I'm like, wait, weren't they here for something more specific than this?
And what's Hera's game for this? Like, why does she want?
Like, whatever Hera's trying to like convince her to do, ultimately, like, the goal of turning her into her like warrior does feel like malicious. It does feel like she's been lured in, and it's the wrong choice to us, the reader, which is fine. I'm okay with this being like the dangling like bad choice that seems like a noble one to her from her perspective, but we're all going, no, we're all rooting for her to make the choice to stay on Earth and be a hero and save other people and whatever else. But it does feel a little bit poorly defined so far in this issue. And I remember feeling the last couple of issues feeling a little... It's felt a bit muddier storytelling-wise the more it's went on, I think, issue to issue. And I think part of that might be the delays and the long gaps. Yeah. But I think part of it is also just in the story writing. And I think the sad part of this is that this is the second book now from Joelle Jones where, I've loved her art, and I started her Catwoman book because it was her, and I felt the same thing in Catwoman, where after a few issues, I just wasn't as into the story after an arc because it was getting muddier. Yeah. And I'm feeling sadly the same way, which is a shame because I loved those Future State issues and I loved the start of this. Mm-hmm. And I think Yara Flor as a character has a lot of appeal. But when Joelle Jones seems to get into the actual meat of the story, it always seems to kind of start to just buckle under the weight of whatever she's trying to do. And I kind of felt it here again as well, where instead of being really excited by the pieces you're setting up, because at its core, you think about it, she's been given this choice to accept this offer from Hera, but it'll mean giving up life on Earth, and it'll mean not being this hero of the people that she feels that she should be. And that should be like for the audience, for the reader, that should be a like, oh, I really hope she makes the right choice. It's a really simple yes or no. It should feel quite simple, but I feel like this story so far has not made it very clear what all the different like factions want from her, and they're trying to keep it mysterious as to what her existence means to everyone and why they all want to have an influence on her. Mm-hmm. And because that's not being defined, it's really hard to just get into the choice that she's making. And I don't know, like I feel like there's a more streamlined version of this that feels it should exist.
Right, like it would have been nice for Artemis and Cassie to be like, hey, it's your decision to make, but just be wary of Hera, because traditionally she's not a friend of the Amazons, but there's nothing there's nothing like that in there to like inform Yara of this decision. It's almost as if she's just like, oh, I haven't even really got to live in this world. That's what it seems like she's talking to Zhao about, is almost like this, oh, I'm just starting to live. Why do I go and be the servant of Hera? Or do I, just stay down here to have fun? And it's almost kind of like it's very shallow.
I mean, Cassie's advice to her, right? It's like, you've got a lot of eyes on you, and whatever you decide is going to like, affect a delicate balance. Mm-hmm. I know you're excited about the big adventure, but don't forget, don't become blind to the dangers around you. It's still so vague, and I feel like at this point we need to define some of this. We need to define what some of this danger is and what this choice really is, but we're not getting it yet. And if it's meant to be for mystery reasons, like this is still meant to be mysterious, at a certain point we need to understand enough of it so that there's some weight to the things being made and the choices being made.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, very murky on this issue. Obviously the art is gorgeous, but like, that's not what I'm here to complain about.
Even though the montages are a bit unfulfilling, they're still pretty to look at.
Oh, the art itself is good. I mean, but ultimately it's like just like excess style over any substance in those pages.
Yeah, and that's why I wish Connor was on here, because we could have a long discussion about Chiron the Centaur, the trainer of heroes. You know, and it was fun to see him pop up. But
I'm sure he went through a box of Kleenex when he was reading those pages.
Gross. All right, we're gonna do ratings.
Yeah, so Joy rate Wonder Girl.
I'm gonna give this a 7.
Yeah, I'm going with a 6. Unfortunately, I'm starting to get frustrated with the book. I need some better storytelling and more defined stakes at this point. The mystery so far is not working for me, and I think part of it is that there's two, like, having all these other factions of Amazons, and like even though I was excited to see Cassie at first, like having all these characters looking for her, I think is just adding too much onto it. If this was just like, can she trust Hera or not? And we as a reader suspect she can't because we know Hera, but like if it was just focused on that and it was more of a personal story, that'd be fine. But it's murkying things up a bit too much with too many things, and not defining enough. So yeah, 6 out of 10. Art's very good though, so yeah, take it as you will.